I'm Tandy Culpepper. On this episode of the Hollywood Beat, I'm talking to the fabulous Reba Merrill, the queen of the Hollywood Press Junket, according to one Hollywood wag. So, hello, Queen Reba.
Hello. I'm not used to being called a queen.
First, I have to congratulate you because you have some big news to share that has to do with the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences. And that is
that I was thrilled that they decided to accept all of my interviews and all of my television footage for their archives, which is the history of Hollywood. So I will be part of the history of Hollywood, and I am beyond words.
And they're calling it the Reba Merrill Collection.
I'm a collection.
Wow. Well, darling, of course you are. So where is this collection archived?
I happen to know. It's at USC next to Shoah from Steven Spielberg in their new vault. USC has a new vault that Spielberg and Lucas put up the money for.
Shoah, that's the Holocaust.
Yes, and I'm right next to it.
I don't know what that pretends, but
the thing that's interesting about all of this is that USC sent out an invitation, I presume, to the Academy, to the archives at UCLA, etc., saying we will take some footage that you want to preserve. And they picked my stuff.
Wow.
So I am thrilled.
And this is in something that's fireproof, I hope.
It is the state of the art. If I'm next to Spielberg, trust me, it's the state of the art.
That's amazing. Because I remember sometime back, I think it was Universal, there was a fire, and all of these musicians' masters were destroyed.
The fire is dangerous, not our friend.
Yeah. So they need to preserve these in places that they can keep them from being lost forever. So tell me, who are some of the interviews in this collection?
Well, I think what really will appeal to the Academy is I do have a lot of Oscar winners, like Jimmy Stewart, like Jack Lemmon, like Cher, like Meryl Streep, like Al Pacino. I don't have Robert De Niro, believe it or not, but I have Al Pacino. I have Alice doesn't live here anymore. I can't remember her name. She's
now
still
working. Now that you've said that, I can't think. Ellen Burstyn?
Ellen. No. Yeah, Ellen Burstyn. She's about 90 or 89. And she's still working. So I have her. I just have too many. But then I have Whitney Houston and Johnny Depp and Harrison Ford and Nick Cage. I have 10 interviews of Nick Cage. I did an interview a year with him. He's a man that never says no to a movie.
How did you find Whitney Houston?
Well, the story behind it is that I was hired for waiting.
No, I mean when you interviewed her.
That's what I'm going to tell you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so for Waiting to Exhale, she walked out, not on me, but on the entire international day. So when I got hired again for The Preacher's Wife, they called me on a domestic day. I wasn't supposed to work till the next day, and said, get over here now to the junket. And they stuck me in, like at lunch. And I found her charming.
Oh.
And you know, I have to just say, it's just between you and me. She liked me. She liked what I said to her, and I wasn't blowing smoke. Yeah, I just said, it was a long time I wanted to be you. I wanted to have all the things you have. And then she just opened up and told me what it's not, what you don't have with fame and fortune. Which absolutely blew the world away. And every time anything comes up about Whitney, since no one ever returned these interviews, they play it again because it's like magic.
When I interviewed her, she was pregnant with Bobby Christina and not the best of moods. Her ankles were swollen and she had them propped up on a um, stool with a pillow on it. And it was, I mean, I've never been pregnant with swollen ankles, so I can't judge, but I didn't have the best time, let's put it that way.
I don't think, if we really want to be honest, I don't think she likes doing interviews. I don't think she's comfortable
Well,
having to talk and
in the past tense, she's no longer with us.
I still don't think she's comfortable trying to talk about personal things. And what do you think we want when we do an interview? I don't
Exactly.
want to know what it's like working with Denzel. I
Yeah,
don't
who
know because
cares?
I don't believe what they say anyway. But I do
Exactly.
want to know the impact of that role of going back into a church and singing gospel music. And that's what opened up the whole interview.
Well, her mother was a gospel singer, was she
Very
not?
famous, Sissy, yeah.
Um, you told me one time, because I know that you started out in local television on a talk show, and you said that you were forced to start, you became an entrepreneur not by choice, but by force.
Yes. Well, I had the dream job. I never thought it would ever happen to me, but I was doing the big morning show in San Diego on CBS. It was an hour show, and I got to do all the celebrities. I mean, I couldn't ask for anything more. When they hired me, they asked me two questions. They asked me what I was earning doing the talk show in Phoenix, which is a right to work state. And so I gave them the salary that my co host was getting because it was 3 times my salary. And I told them my age. I didn't think anything of it. And when I was nearly 45, they fired me and replaced me with a 22-year-old. Yes, I guess she looked better than me. But obviously, age has a lot to do with it because after that, I got 17 rejections from everything I tried. And the only place I could work was on an access cable station, which I took. They paid me, and it was a big come down, but it gave me a chance to work. And then I got fired from that for my mouth. I don't mind being fired for my mouth. I do mind being fired for my age. And then I went on to win an Emmy against my old show from that little cable access show.
After being fired?
Yes, I won against them. I was on the cable show and I beat the CBS show and I have an Emmy. So the thing is that after I realized that nobody was ever going to want me, nobody was ever going to put me back on the air again. I told my husband that I was going to LA and I was going to look for a job. Can I say job? Doing interviews. And he thought I was crazy because he said, you did 4 talk shows. What, and you have an Emmy. What more could you possibly want? And I said this, there's something inside of me that I haven't finished. And I don't even know what it was, but I knew I had to try. And I figured, and I'm safe. If I fail, I can go back to my husband because I wasn't leaving him for another man. I was leaving him for a job. And I'd already left him once because we lived in Phoenix and I took that show in San Diego. So he was getting used to it. But I came up, and the rest of the story is the first man that interviewed me, that looked at my interviews, who offered me any kind of interview job I wanted and attached it to sex. He did 2 things before he did that. He showed me everything he was doing, and I realized that he didn't know who the end user was. He didn't know about the Tandys of the world. He didn't know about Reba that did a local talk show. They were sending Reba and Tandy the product, but it was the wrong product. They were sending an hour of stuff that you had to put together.
Right.
And so I went out asked for help, got somebody hired me to do what was in my head of the package that I thought a local station would want. I had already put the network together of local television stations because I knew a studio would never want me without a television show. So then I had 55 television shows. So I figured I looked good for them. And it worked. It worked. Did I make mistakes along the way? Yes. I tried to give what I was doing away because I couldn't get into the studios. It didn't matter that they used to adore me when I had the CBS show. So this nice man that hired me and let me work on 3 movies. The first I interviewed Robert Redford. The second I interviewed Paul Newman. And the third interview, I didn't interview him. I just wrote the interview and he did it, was another big name, but whose name I've forgotten because I didn't interview him. And so the thing is that I proved that what was in my head would work. And then somebody gave me a job on the outside to redo some footage that had been shot that they didn't like the interviews. And that was the beginning. And the nice thing is that the man that was willing to let me try to interview for him, the Redford and the Newman, he said to me, take these jobs, but if you ever need to come back, please come back to me. And that was a really nice feeling. But after that first job, within a week, I had Universal Studios. And I never looked back.
Wow.
But the best part of all of this, I started with you, but I finished my career. The last 11 years of my career, no one in the United States ever got to see my interviews because they only played outside of the United States in over 60 countries on between 35 and 5,000 television shows. And nobody ever knew I did it. I was like a secret because they put it in their language. They took credit for it. It was designed to take credit for it, except you just told me you didn't take credit.
No, I ran you as my secret weapon in Hollywood.
So that's my story.
Well, that's pretty crafty, I must say.
Well, the best thing about being pushed against a wall when you have no hope of anything, it gives you a lot of power to go out, and what you think is a risk is really being tenacious and try it. Most people are afraid.
Yeah, well, but that's what separates the Reba Merrills from the also rans.
Okay, whatever.
You have had fun along the way, but it's been a lot of work
Yes.
because you write this stuff yourself.
I research it.
You
That,
research it.
I research
That's the
everything.
beginning. Yes.
Now, this is before the internet. It's much easier today, but before the internet, I used to go to the motion picture library for 25 cents. You get a locker. You're not allowed to bring anything in except a pen, pencil, and a pad to write on. But you can Xerox for 25 cents a page of any of the information that you read that fascinated you, which I did.
I wasn't even aware of that resource.
Oh my God, yes. But you don't live in LA. But when you got to LA, I just took for granted everybody knew about that. I wasn't a member of the Academy. Anybody could go there. It, it is the most fascinating information on every star that ever existed, all the way back to 1928.
Wow.
Well, probably earlier, I guess. I didn't go back that far.
Well, I live in LA and have for 30 years, and I still didn't know that
It's
existed.
on La Cienega and Olympic, right on the corner. You have tennis courts on top. Of
Oh, I know exactly where
course
that
you
is.
do.
I played on those courts.
Underneath is the library. It's fabulous.
Wow. And anyone can go there.
Yeah, you just have to buy it. You have to get a locker, leave your stuff in there, and then and that's so funny because I said to you for 25 cents you could Xerox any page you want. And so when I went to interview Paul Newman, I didn't do it on Robert Redford. Don't ask me why. I could have been much smarter, but it's passed. But for Paul Newman, I was so nervous. I don't know. Um, I went there, and in doing the research, I found out that he hated the Silver Chalice. It was his first big movie, and he hated it. And he tried to buy the print back, but he wasn't successful. But I find this interesting article written by Hedda Hopper. For your audience that doesn't know, she was a very famous newspaper gossip columnist.
Like Luella Parsons.
Yes, with a lot of power in Hollywood. And after I did the interview with Paul Newman, I said, I know you didn't like the Silver Chalice. I said, but Hedda Hopper wrote this amazing story about you in this movie and ended it by saying Hollywood has a new star. And this is the article. And he says to me, I took it with me. I also think that if I Xerox something or I write something, I have to take it with me, that I read it through sitting down. Okay. It's just something I do. And he says to me, can I see it? And I said, yes. And he starts to read. He said, could I have this? I said, yeah.
Really?
And that was the best 25 cents I ever spent.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, that's great. Hedda Hopper.
Yeah.
Now, if you're a cinephile, you have to go back and figure out who she is because
But she was just in, or was it Luella Parsons when they did that thing about Hollywood, that thing about Hollywood and the blacklist or something, and she was
right.
forcing the studios to abide by what Germany wanted. Oh
I
no,
can't.
no, I know. It was the early part when Germany, before the war, when Germany demanded that the Hollywood studios, run by mostly Jewish people, abided by what they wanted in the films that were going to play in Germany. And she pushed the studios to do that. She then
Really?
went back and pushed the studios not to hire anybody in the 50s that was going to be accused of being a communist.
Really? During the McCarthy era?
It's in a television show. I didn't make it up.
I can't remember what that show is.
Well, I can't help you. I just get the memories.
I'll have to look that up now.
Okay.
I know I must have seen it. But moving on,
Yeah.
you have taken your act, and I know you've stopped doing it, but you took it and you, not on the road, but on the ocean, and you did cruise ship
Yeah.
lectures.
I did cruise ships for 10 years because after I stopped working in Hollywood, by then I had lied well past what is a respectable age because usually they don't let women work in their 70s. And so I knew that my career was kind of over for Hollywood. But these interviews are what we call evergreens. It didn't matter what film they did. I could stick any film in, and the interview was exactly the same. And so I took 45 of my favorite interviews and I digitized them. And I had them re-edited with a lot of illegal footage. Because when I lecture, I'm 3 miles out or more, and I come under the same category as gambling. So if they can gamble, I'm never at port. I never do this at port, always at sea. And so I put together a program where we'd have a theme. We'd have 5 actors or actresses, but I do 5 men or 5 women, and there was a theme to it. And then I would talk and tell you what really went on in the interview because what you see is not always what you get. And I did it for a long time and I loved it. But then my husband died and I just kind of closed shop. And in a year or 2 years after he died, came the pandemic. He died in 2018. And
2020,
um,
the
it,
pandemic hit.
yeah, or 20, yeah. And so I felt, well, this is my life anyway.
Right.
And so, but I came back and I've done two more. I know I said I wasn't going to do this anymore, but I have a new relationship, and he had never seen me and what my career is. He read my books, but that, he never saw me in action. And so when I got this invitation, I said, "You want to see me? It's either going to break the relationship or he's going to sit back and enjoy it." And he did. And so I did two, and now there's been a little overture. I don't know if I'll take the third. I have to say this, traveling today is not fun. It really isn't. So, but it
Yeah.
was great. Those 10 years, I saw the world because I used the ship or the cruise to get me to some exotic place and then stayed there. Had a hotel and stayed for a week or 10 days and then flew home.
Did they fly you first class
Oh, they fly you coach, but I always fly business class or first class. And then they'll just give me a coach ticket in money.
yeah, you have mileage.
Nope, never use mileage.
Oh, you just pay the difference.
Peter Greenberg, who works for CBS as a travel expert, especially, he said, "Don't use miles, buy the tickets." He said, "If it takes 100,000 miles, you had to spend at least $100,000 to get the 100,000 points."
Right,
So
right,
I don't do that. I just take and buy the ticket. I do have a ticket broker who finds me um, tickets that they can buy cheap off. A lot of people with miles will sell their tickets, will sell their miles to buy tickets, will sell their miles for money.
right.
And then I buy the ticket from the ticket broker.
Gotcha.
And so it's less money than what's advertised up there.
Well,
And
that's something I didn't know existed. How did you find that?
because when I started doing 4 to 7 cruises a year, I had to find out a reasonable way to fly at least business class and not pay $10,000, $12,000 for round trip.
How did you find, how
Somebody
did
told me,
you, somebody told you about a ticket broker?
and I have two of them. And if you ever decide you are interested, personally, I will tell you how to get a hold of them.
Great, great. Maybe our viewers would like to,
Oh, I
or
don't want to hustle ticket broker.
okay. All right. Go Google it. Just Google ticket broker. Maybe we'll say that. Um, so you were on these cruise ships and you noticed that other people were selling
Oh,
things.
everybody was selling something except me. So I sat down and I wrote a book. So I could have something to sell too. And actually, I have to say this, I had a captive audience. And so they wanted to know the story. Actually, the first book was really how I got to Hollywood. I mean, the thing is, I opened the lecture by saying everybody wants to know how a happy homemaker got to Hollywood. And it's very simple. I failed a lot, but I tell the whole story, starting with the divorce of my first marriage and the beginning of looking for a husband for my second marriage. Okay. And then this husband pushes me to do something with my life. And no one had ever done that, including my parents.
So what was the title of the first book?
Nearly Famous, Tales from the Hollywood Trenches.
Nearly Famous. I've read it. I know I've read it. I just forgot the title.
It's okay. But you see, everybody in the room was famous, but me was nearly famous. I never got discovered doing this.
I know the feeling from all the interviews I've done over the years with all these famous people, and you're more nearly famous than I ever was. So the second book.
The second book was something I never thought I would ever write, but a publisher came to me and said, "Do you have, how many interviews do you have?" And I said, I don't know, 1,000, 1,500, I don't know. He said, could you pick some of your favorite interviews and possibly do a book and put the interview in? And it wasn't that difficult to do. And originally, he was going to package it with the first book so I wouldn't have to tell the story of how I got to the second book, Hollywood. But it turned out that he didn't. So I had to go back and incorporate in this new book stories of I didn't talk about looking for a husband or any of that, but I talked about my second marriage and how he pushed me into doing something, which eventually leads to a television show. And so how I got the first television show in Phoenix, and then how I got the second television show in San Diego, and then I end up in Hollywood. So I stuck all that into the second book, which is called Making It, What I Got Away With in Hollywood. And I did get away with a lot. For some reason, when I did these interviews, I figured out a way to get personal stuff out of them when they normally don't talk about anything personal. And I'll give you an example, and it's on my website, so I'm not lying. I interviewed Harrison Ford.
And your website is?
RebaMerrill.com. I like to use my name.
MERR, 2 R's and 2 L's.
Correct. I'm 2 R's and 2 L's. I had interviewed Harrison Ford in 1977, when the first interview he did for Star Wars. And you can see that interview up there. It's unedited, and I didn't like him. No, it's not that I didn't like him. I was bored. I thought he was boring. Okay. The second time I interview him, he is a major movie star. And so this was for Air Force One, and he's playing the President of the United States. So I did two things. I walked in, he said, I'm happy to see you. So I turned around to see who he was talking to. I never did that again. It was really me, but I thought it was somebody behind me. And I said to him, don't worry about the questions. I know all the answers. So I did a lot of research. We sit down, and I said to him, you play the best heroes on the big screen. Are you getting back at the bullies that beat you up at school?
Wow.
And he laughed, and he told the story, because he did. He was a new kid in school. So it is up there. You can see it. It also did something. He actually realized that I did a lot of research to find that little story. And he's not easy to interview. He's a curmudgeon. He really is. In fact, if you see the television show Shrinking, that's the real Harrison Ford.
No kidding.
No, I'm not kidding. I mean, my God.
Yeah, I've seen the show. In fact, I interviewed a clinical psychologist and asked her if she'd seen the show, and she said she hadn't. I said, you got to see it.
And the thing is, he's a curmudgeon, and it is exactly what he is in real life. But the thing is, he has a great deal of respect for journalists who take the time to do their homework. Because I've seen him when he went to Comic-Con, and when he does these big, all those big junkets where they have everybody in it and they're talking and then to me, he's rude sometimes. He just doesn't like the question he feels is stupid, or he doesn't suffer fools. And so the thing is, that was the second time I interviewed him. I interviewed him 3 more times for 3 more films. And he always was nice to me, because then I think he did remember who I was. At the time, after I did that interview, I get a phone call from the studio executive who was watching it. She didn't call right after the interview. She called at the end of the day. And she says to me, what did you do to him? I said, what are you talking about? She said, he wasn't nice to anybody but you. Curt answers, quick answers, yes, no, whatever, the kind of answers we hate, right?
Right. You can't do anything with them. No.
So I'm very proud of that interview that's up there. You actually see him, maybe you don't see it, but he laughs in the interview Harrison is not a laugher. I was to do 20 minutes, and whoever was running the television crew for the room put in 10. And when I do an interview, I only concentrate on the star so that I can hear everything in case there's a little crumb I can go back on. And he looks over my shoulder to my cameraman, who's really his cameraman because he photo, and he says, "Put another tape in. We're not finished." Now, you know damn well he could have just said, "Thank you, Reba. It was nice seeing you," or whatever. He was
Right.
actually having a good time. So then I had to look at him and say, "I can't remember the question." He told me the question. In the book, that interaction with the laughter, I describe it, with how stupid I am that I have to ask him. Well, it's on tape. So I just took the interviews, the tapes of the interviews, and put them into the book. The only ones I edited out, Jimmy Stewart, I had 90 minutes, and the first half hour was all about the movie, the Glenn Miller story, and I really it didn't work unless you could see pictures of what he was talking about. So I just did the personal side of Jimmy Stewart.
90 minutes.
Yeah, I did. Well, I was supposed to have 30. And I thanked him and I said, "Gee, I had more questions to ask." And we're at home. We're at his publicist's home, Paul Hinderschmidt's house. And he says to me, "I know what my cadence is. Why don't you come back? Sit down and you can ask me anything you want." So I asked him
Wow.
about Harvey. I asked him about everything. The Westerns, the impact of the Westerns that saved his career, how he was a failure. He thought he was a failure after It's a Wonderful Life because that failed. And everybody,
And yet
but it took
over
a
it's
long
become
time,
a
but
classic.
after a while, it started in England over the holidays. They ran it on a cable station, and that's what changes his life.
Wow. And then there was Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Well, I did all of those. I talked about all this stuff. But I also wanted to talk about he married a divorcee with 2 kids. That wasn't done. He tells about his crush he had on Greta Garbo. I didn't know that one. How he was chasing her. He chased her so much he knocked her over.
Are you serious?
Of course I'm serious. Why would I make it up? Nobody. It
He
came.
knocked her over.
Yes, because he was running. He was working on a sound stage and she was working on the next one. And he got the lighting guy to tell him, who knew him, to tell him when she was finished and would start to go to her limousine to go home. And he runs out of his soundstage and runs to her soundstage. And he ran so fast he wasn't looking and he knocked her over.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What a story. Wow. Now, which of the books did you start out saying that you were a liar?
Hmm. Well, I guess both because I lied about my age. I knew if they ever really knew how old I was, that I came to Hollywood, I was 47 years old. Who comes to Hollywood at 47? And who gets hit on at 47? I didn't think that was, I thought that was terrible. But no.
Getting hit on at
Oh,
47?
I think you're talking about, let's see, one of the 10 things I learned about Hollywood. Hold on. Maybe I should read them and then it'll hit a button.
Yeah, read some of the beginning.
Okay. Number one, when dealing with incompetent people, I'm sure you know that one, with studio power, take your name off the project. Mean people don't single you out. They are mean to everybody. Don't take on someone who is sleeping with her powerful boss. I've done that. That was really exciting. Make contacts first, develop talent second. An inflated ego is hazardous to your health, marriage, and career. Number 6, since Hollywood is high school with money, try to stay away from the mean girls. 7, don't burn bridges. Keep your opinions to yourself. 8, a successful career does not guarantee happiness. 9, always say yes, even when you mean no. And 10, for me to survive in Hollywood, I had to learn to lie.
That's it.
But I was only lying about my age. And I did it so that I just took off 10 years. That's all I did.
I was taking voice lessons from a woman one time, and she said, "How old are you?" And I told her, and she said, "That's the last time you ever admit your age to anybody in this business." And I said, "Wow." And she said, "Yeah, it's a very ageist business that you're in."
And you and I both have young voices. We do not sound old.
On the telephone, people, when I tell them how old I am, they don't believe it. And I'd say the same thing about you.
When I tell your audience at the end of the interview how old I am, they won't believe that either.
Well,
then
speaking
we're
of
going to look
which,
at the video to see what I look like.
well, we're at the end of the interview. Do you
So I
want
guess
to
it's my turn to tell you how old I am?
go ahead?
I'm 88
Unbelievable.
and happy
And happy.
and healthy.
And if you have your health, you have everything.
Everything.
Well, Reba, thank you so much for being here with me today. Let's give the names of the books one more time.
Okay, my first book is called Nearly Famous, Tales from the Hollywood Trenches. And the second book is called Making It, What I Got Away With in Hollywood. And I did get away with a lot.
And both of them are available on Amazon.
I never hurt anybody, and I never got kicked out of an interview. And I worked for 25 years in Hollywood.
Great. Thank you.